Hey, and we're live. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the Banff podcast, our special NERDBURGERCON edition. This panel is called Behind the Scenes, How to Write a Scintillating Adventure. And I have had a whole bunch of very intelligent people here in the Brady Bunch grid next to me, directly.
I was going to say, where are they all?
They're in those purple squares to your left and right. They're invisible.
Yes, all the smart people are above me.
Directly beneath me is Mr. Owen K. Stevens, the godfather, if you will, of Starfinder and various other things. How you doing, Owen?
I'm good. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm pleased to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you, sir. Next to Owen in the Alice the Maid spot of the Brady Bunch grid is Mike Myler from Ian World Publishing. How you doing, sir?
Great. I thought it was a hot day here in Pittsburgh. I'm wrong. It's a very light, breezy day of 90 degrees. So, yeah, just working and hanging out with my dog.
Cool. All right. And next to Mr. Myler, we have Jacob Blackman. How you doing, Jacob?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
And Jacob is the author of Many Mutants and Masterminds Adventures from Rogue Super Genius Games, right?
Rogue Genius
Games, sorry. Disaster Day being one of them. And speaking of M&M Adventures, directly above Jacob is Mr. Christopher McLaughlin, host or the boss of Ghost Show Press, who has written just a bevy of very famous Mutants and Masterminds adventures. How you doing, sir?
I was told there would be singing cats. Cat.
Give me a minute.
Am I in the right place?
I'm sure we can come up with something for you.
I've got so many jokes, and all of them are inappropriate. Next to Chris is Alice Pang. How you doing, Alice?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm the less writing person of the group. I'm new to writing for publication.
But you have an adventure coming out from Frog God Games in the near future?
I do.
Okay.
I very much do. And I have some other projects that are starting up.
And so we have a wide panoply of a wide spectrum of experience. And I don't want to leave out Walt or Billiard. They're in the lowest square on the grid. How you doing, Walt?
I was just happy to be invited and be around all these wonderful people, especially Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. Walt runs Hazard Studios and has written many adventures. We are live, so feel free to comment. We can see your comments, or at least I can. And welcome to NERDBURGERCON. And let's get going. Before we kick off completely, I have been asked by Craig Campbell, our gracious host of NERDBURGERCON, to mention that we have a giveaway. You see these dice? Look at these dice. Aren't they beautiful? That is the Root Beer Float collection.
I love root beer floats.
Yep. And that can be yours. Email me at mikelaff@gmail.com, MIKELAFF@gmail.com with the phrase dice in the subject line, and we will give this away to one of our lucky audience members. So please do that so someone can have those beautiful dice. So, hey, Craig Campbell's there. How you doing, Craig? And Sarah Felmet is in their comments as well. Hey, Sarah. All right, so I've introduced everybody. I have set up the dice giveaway, and boy, those dice look delicious. Hey, Chris Boyer, good to see you in the comments too, sir. And so now I'm going to give an incredibly sophomorish and hastily written outline of adventure design. And then I will let these very smart people below me go into it a bit more depth and in greater detail. So just the basics. And this is really just what I do when I'm running something for my home group. And I do the same basic steps when I'm doing it for publication too. But first off, what's the hook? Why do your players' characters care? Why would they want to get involved? This is a good opportunity. There's a lot of tropes for how you get adventurers into a situation. This is a good place to look for, hey, that's a tired trope. Maybe I can put a different angle on it. It doesn't always have to be a guy wearing a hoodie in a tavern, although that is the classic. Next one, who are the bad guys? Who's the antagonist? Who are you fighting? Need to define them, stat blocks. Where does it happen? Location. And for adventure design, I know for my home group, I always like to have a great map. It doesn't help for publication. It doesn't hurt for publication either. What kind of interactions are you going to have in this adventure? How many? What kind of fights? Once again, there's a lot of very staid, traditional kind of fights. Can you put some is there opportunities for putting spins on things here? Jacob told me about an adventure a few months back where they were fighting in a temple trying to take out, the big bad guy. But it was the middle of a summoning ceremony or something, and there were levitating stones over a spire. So it just added a level of, complexity to it that made it different and memorable. Also, along the same lines, what kind of non-combat challenges are you going to have? What's there for the engineer or the tinkerers to do? And finally, last but not least, there's probably someone in your group who likes to do voices and maybe, get into character. Try to craft some role-playing opportunities for that person. Hey, Dale Russell, we're glad you're here too, also in the comments. So that's just, real basic cliff notes on adventure design. I am going to stop screen sharing, and I will turn the mic over to, who wants to go first? Okay, well, I tell you what, I saw Walt pointing 2 fingers, one to Jacob and one to Owen. We'll start with Owen, and then we'll go to Jacob to get their own take on adventure design. And I'll mute myself now and hand it over to Owen.
So for me, the most important thing about an adventure is what am I writing this adventure for? What am I creating it for? If I am creating an adventure for publication, then my number one concerns are, the word count and the determined level and the things the publisher is worried about. And that's where you really have to be concerned with how much do I need to do character hooks? Are we going to have a player's guide that tell people how to get involved? How do I order this information in such a way that the GM knows what's important? All too often when I am running a published adventure from any publisher, I will sometimes find that someone is introduced and you learn a little about them, and then 30 pages later you discover that they have a critical piece of information that is the only way for the PCs to successfully get a happy ending. Or they are actually a dragon that has been polymorphed into a human form, or just whatever it is. And I understand why, from a narrative flow, you don't want that information to get to the player's hands when you first run into the character. But if you're trying to present information for a game master, I think it's very important to take the information that the game master needs and lay it out, maybe even in bullet point format. Very simply, very interesting, because to have a scintillating adventure, the GM needs to not be constantly flipping through the book looking for relevant information. No matter how great the stuff you've put together is, if it's not organized in a way that the game master running that game can access it easily, understand it easily, and get it in front of the players quickly, the best ideas and the most exciting encounters become boring as the GM's flipping back and forth. I don't remember if there's a secret door in this room or not. Paizo, for example, has a very specific format for their adventures where they're saying, here's the setup, here are the creatures, here are the hazards in the room, here are the developments, which are things that happen in that area after the adventure. And by standardizing that, whether it's the best possible format or not, people that run their adventures a lot are used to, okay, this is the format, this is where the information is. They usually also have a outline at the beginning that says, here's the rough arc of the adventure. If I am trying to create an adventure for my players, I just need enough notes that I don't end up flipping back and forth. It doesn't have to be something someone else can read. And then things like how do I get the players involved tends to be a simple matter of, what did the players show interest in the last game session? Well, that's the thing I'm going to expand on in the next game session. So it's always relevant to their interests, because if I say, hey, there's a weird tomb spider inn, and they go, well, we don't care about that, then I don't have to waste any time writing up the tomb spider inn. If they say, oh, that's fascinating, we want to check that out. Oh, that's weird, we're going to come back here, we might retire here. Well, now I know that this is a location they care about, and I can add other encounters to that later. So specifically working off player expectation and player interest is the way that I have a home game be interesting. That is obviously much harder to do in publication. So those are the high-end things that I look at.
All right, cool. Thank you very much, Owen. That was great. Jacob, do you have some thoughts?
Well,
And
yeah,
sorry, Mr. Mylar was giving Owen the golf clap. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
it's because Owen is
So
always well spoken and has very informative things to say, unlike me. Adventure writing is always different. It's always a huge difference between what you're writing as a GM for your own games, for your home campaigns, versus what you're going to be writing for publication. And for publication, Owen was correct in that you need to make sure everything is balanced for whatever power level or character level the adventure is going to be set, and make sure things are going to be fun and interesting, that there's going to be plenty of things for a variety of different characters to do. But also in that consideration, you need to know who your characters are, and you don't have that sort of information in front of you when you're writing a published adventure. You pretty much just have to assume anyone and everyone of every class, race, whatever, is going to be picking this up and playing with it. So you never know what abilities are going to be there. You just have to put the information out there, and the GM has to allow for whatever the characters in their game can do to mess with whatever is written in that adventure. As for my home adventures, it's much more clear, in I can plan what I'm doing based on the things that the characters had done in the previous session, and I always try to get an idea of what are you looking to do next time we play, and that'll help me write what we're going to do next time. So it's very clear and easy. Also, for writing home adventures, it's going to be 1 or 2 pages of a document, whereas if you're writing a published adventure, it's going to be dozens of pages potentially, unless it's just a really short 2 or 3 encounter kind of thing. But I find that you want to make sure that there are opportunities for every character to shine. That is the big deal. Is you want to have specific points in the game that allow for each PC to have a happy moment.
I always thought Grant Morrison was a good model for that in his JLA run. He always found a way to get everyone, there was always something for Aquaman to do in every adventure. So, Mike, I saw you raising your hand, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to jump on the keep everybody involved train with an example. This isn't from a published adventure, but like in high school, a GM had us do like a gladiator fight, which is great for my gladiator character, but would have been boring for everybody else if he hadn't also provided like poison glass and true strike potions, so they could like flick, poison glass at the guy was fighting and screw around and otherwise involve themselves in the scene. But generally for veteran design, I'm almost always designing for the setting of where the adventure is. So like it is important to have exploration and social interactions and combat, the 3 pillars. But like it's always about reinforcing the themes for me anyway, it's always about reinforcing the themes and offering like opportunities for people to engage with the themes of the setting. So because here's how it works. Whenever you make a game book, you can, or for that matter, any kind of collaborative storytelling thing, you can give them a proscenium stage with like pillars and togas, and they'll do a modern Shakespeare with it instead of a Greek tragedy. So like all you're doing is providing the best tools possible for telling the story that you really want them to tell. They'll do whatever they do with it. So I try to focus on like those themes and giving them opportunities to express them. So like for the evil campaign setting, there's probably going to be some orphans at some point, right? Because you're supposed to be doing evil stuff, and that's a great evil fuel. In the one campaign setting, it's about like falling to the dark side and all that. Like there's lots of high risk combats where they're meant to dip into that resource that sort of draws them further and further down the path of indignity. And so I would say that like when you're writing a setting or writing an adventure, unless it's setting agnostic, that like that's a major part of it. You have to keep in mind like, okay, well this is Eberron. There's going to be steampunk stuff. I have to address the steampunk stuff, or it's going to be a weird adventure to have set in Eberron. And then for home campaigns, I'm a terrible person. I just kind of show up 20 minutes before and get a couple of ideas out, and then find out where they go and tell them all to wait 5 minutes while I set up a map and wing it most of the time. So
Cool. Yeah, I had a home GM who was terrible at winging it. NPCs never had names. It was my pet peeve. It's like, oh, there's a wizened old man at the campfire who wants to talk to you. I'm like, what's his name? He's a wizened old man. So, did you have something to say, Owen?
Yeah, you mentioned names, and it made me realize one of the ways as a GM to run scintillating adventures is to know what you are bad at and accommodate for it. I am bad at coming up with names off the cuff. That is why I have written and published so many name generators, so that I know, hey, I'm not good at coming up with names. I frequently have a list of random cool-sounding names as part of my GM tools. So if people are like, oh, we want to go find someone who can make silver bullets for us, I don't have to go, okay, you find Mr. Bullet Maker, John Silver Bullet Maker. Which, if you want to do that, right, having a character named Bullet Maker is not the worst thing in the world, but if the baker's named Baker and the candlestick maker is Candlestick Maker, it gets boring after a while. So I'm just saying, whatever it is that you're bad at, take steps to be ready to mitigate that. When you're writing adventures for publishing, anything that you think may be hard for the GM, try and give them advice on how to handle it. If you're running a giant town and you know it's an urban adventure and you don't have room to put a lot of town in there, it is not a bad idea to say, hey, there are a lot of town settings out there. If you're a publisher that has one, like if I was doing one for Green Ronin, it'd be like, you can use the Freeport setting. Even if you're running a 5th edition game and you have the Freeport book for Pathfinder, this can still be useful for the names of streets, names of shops, names of NPCs and general plot lines and even pictures. And I can just put that in as a sidebar because I know that a lot of GMs have trouble making up shops and streets and urban things on the fly. So you made me think of a note that I don't often think to mention. Being bad at something is a great way to figure out how to come up with the stuff you need to overcome that, and that skill can then apply when you're writing adventures for other people.
Yeah, that is a good tip. I found I was writing a space adventure just last night. I kept looking for spaceship generators, and I believe Alice has a point she wants to make.
Actually, I have a few following up some of what other people have said, because as for writing, I think that there's a lot of good points here, but something I'm not hearing is how to help people who are not linear thinkers. Tools, because while we can all have ideas, we need the proper tools in order to actually put it on paper. And so for me, I actually brought some I opened some of my files to share with people if you'd like, but I use OneNote because I am not a linear thinker. A number of you have played with me as your GM. A number of you know that I now work with a number of different publishers in little different facets. And something I noticed is that when a lot of people end up with, I've got 300 ideas going on simultaneously and I don't know what to do. So for things like that, using a program like a mind mapping program like iThoughts or using OneNote, you can just drop everything out there. And then you start drag and dropping and moving it to where you need it to go. And therefore, you can organize it after the fact. Don't go, oh gosh, I need to know when this is happening or when that's happening, and then try and write it in a linear fashion, because that will stump up a lot of people, even the most seasoned of writers. It's something that, for a long time, I'm like, well, yes, I can write. People are like, Alice, why don't you write stuff? Well, I can, but I've got like 300 different ideas and I don't know how to sort it. So when I found the right tools, it really helped me actually get out there and do stuff. Also, working with a lot of creators and a lot of developers now, I have noticed something that I highly recommend people do. It's one thing to say, go to someone and go, you're my sounding board. I'm going to talk to you about what I want in my stuff. Da, 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 da. That's great. Have that person. But you need to make sure you have someone who doesn't know any of what you verbally told them and read it cold. The reason being is you need to be writing for somebody who doesn't know any of that stuff. And so if you are dealing with your editor being the same person that is your sounding board, sometimes it'll be, depending on the type of person that they are, often you'll end up running into, they will imply things into their minds that you've already given them, and therefore it will never show up on paper. So make sure that you have that someone who is reading it cold and someone to course correct you. Those would be the big tips. And like I said, I've got some show and tell tools if people would like. Yeah.
Bust him out.
Okay. So first off, I'm going to share. So first off, I'm going to share my iThoughts. So iThoughts is mind mapping. So this is actually of an old campaign of ours, and it was actually my player notes. So it's kind of small. This is really big because it was 540 hours of campaign play. But basically, during game, I would just start writing things in, and then I could just drag and drop things later. And so session 7, I know this is session 7, and I just start dropping in what's going on, what's happening, in little tidbits. And then I have little bits of information that I can fill in to, as you can see up top, and so I can expand on it. I use this for writing my modules as well. Sadly, right now, the 3 modules that I have in progress are NDA'd, so I can't use those to show and tell, but I can show you the game notes. And later on, if I need to move, this happened later here or there, I can just drag and drop it to a different section. Another thing about mind maps is you can then go and create a link. So I choose 2 items and I create a link between them. So they know that they're linked between. So 2 characters are linked or something, I can just create a link. So let me do something a little bit bigger, and there's a link and you can see a line going between them. And that's a way of getting some information. And then I'll show you my OneNote. For my OneNote, I am going to show you a home campaign setting right now, because once again, the modules written in that right now are not supposed to be showing to anyone for a few months. But this is a campaign that I'm actually going to be running very soon. And you can see here, so for example, the Harseath is a set of races. And I have these layered. So PC races, you go to PC races, and then you go to Harseath, and then you have these. And these will collapse and expand. And when you're dropping ideas into it, you can go, oh, look, well, I don't like this here. I'm going to move this all the way up here because that makes more sense to be there. And so what I often do is go and create, basically, I have the introduction, and then I have an introduction header, and then I create immediately some sub pages where it's, Act 1, Act 2, and it's just temporarily labeled. And then I just start putting information, ideas into the main section, and as I need to, I just move it. I hope that helps.
Oh, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Hey, blunt force segue time. Christopher McLaughlin, you haven't spoken up too much, and
I've been writing stuff down.
All right. Well, you see those notes afterwards. Well, hey, you were a guy who's written some really legendary adventures for Mutants and Mastermind Second Ed, Time of Crisis, Time of Vengeance, so the first 2 that come to mind. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your approach to adventure writing?
Well, my dearest best friend in the entire world, Lynn, once said to me, writers are vampires. And I'm like, I realized I was that cool just by being a writer. But as she explained, it's, a good writer goes through life absorbing experiences, not only our own, although I find that good writers usually have led pretty interesting lives, but we're open to the stories of everybody that we meet. And that's kind of where my stuff comes from. In a very, very, very weird, bizarre way, I think every adventure that I've ever written, everything I've ever written, has a bit of my life or somebody that I've met in them. And it's just a question of taking these bits and pieces of people and things that I've experienced first or second hand, and just trying to make them with as good a story as possible. And the rule I've developed for the stories, at least, is unless you're Grant Morrison, or you're worshiping a snake god or a badger god or whatever, you're probably to an extent retelling a story that's already been done once. It's very humbling, but Sturgeon's Law, 90% of everything is crap. We just have to realize that we're probably not writing the RPG adventure version of Inception. We're probably just retelling a good story, hopefully. But I find if you can mix 2 of them, see, if you're just ripping off one story, you're just ripping off one story. But if you can combine 2 stories, especially 2 really weird stories, I get a lot of questions about Time of Vengeance, and I just tell people, well, it's basically Citizen Kane mixed with the abominable Dr. Phibes. And whatever else I can take away from my career, I'm the first one who the first person who thought of mixing the greatest movie ever made with this wonderfully over-the-top, colorful Vincent Price B movie from the early 70s. And I mean, I can take no credit for those two great films, but I can take credit for combining them and throwing in superheroes. So yeah, if I find that if you can combine two stories that maybe have never been combined before, at least in that way, you're doing something creative enough to where I can feel good about what I'm publishing. That seems to get me going. And then I sort of take that story, populate it with people that I know. And then maybe the greatest thing that I've learned about writing adventures is if you have your villain, everything else, so many other things just fill in automatically for you. We're all struggling with, what if the players do something wild and crazy? Well, if you have a good villain in mind that has, well thought out motivations, and ways of doing things. If you can get across to the people reading your adventure, this is what this villain is about. This is what they will do. These are their priorities. You're giving whoever's actually going to run that adventure a great deal of help in reacting to these last minute plot twists. If you have a feeling for what that bad guy is going to do, you've got them halfway to come up with a solution of what to do with the next wild turn that's going to happen. And so, yeah, I honestly don't think you can put enough time into developing your villains and their motivations and their quirks. And, getting back to TOV again, my main baddie there, no spoilers on this 13-year-old adventure. But, I've gotten such great messages and feedback over the years that one person, they cried when they got to the end of TOV because they felt my villain's pain. And there you go. I mean, that's the lightning in the bottle you want to catch, a villain that's so real. And, just try to tie this all in a bow. It's a villain that's it's kind of half based on stuff that happened to me and stuff that happened to somebody I was very close to. So it's pain that actually happened. And thank God I was able to get across, what that's like. Maybe for people that have been through it themselves, or maybe people that just, I related what actually happened to them. And I think everything good about that adventure, how, whether that's a little or a lot, I guess, depends on your people think. But yeah, it's just, it's as good as I made that villain. If other people like, the Fog Hat cameo, that's great. But to me, I sold the villain, and that's what made that one memorable. So there you go. That's everything I can add to these brilliant people and their takes on the task at hand.
You got to have a heel, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the villain is the straw that stirs the drink.
Okay. Well, hey, speaking of heels, Walt Billiard has been incredibly silent up until this point. Oh, you're making a face, Walt. I like that. So let's hand the mic off to Walt for just a second, and then we got a question from one of our audience after that. So, Walt, mic is yours.
Groovy. Just I was going to say that whether you're writing something for publication or you're doing something just at your own home table, never forget that for most of us, our role-playing game experiences can be summed up by the great meme. This is what this is what I think I do. This is what my parents think I do, blah, blah, blah. Because somewhere in that meme, when it starts talking about role-playing games, there's always the group of Monty Python actors or what have you. And that you really want to have that something, because it's always about chasing the goddamn bear. You have this amazing plot. Somebody throws Time of Vengeance on the table, and you got some of the players who are all excited and blah blah blah, and you got that one guy that wants to spend 4 hours talking to that one bar owner, or they run out of your meticulously created city so they can go in the woods and chase down a bear. So just make sure that when you're writing and putting in for stuff like that. Yeah, there's the meme. Yep. So just make sure when you're writing those when you're writing adventures, whether for your home table or whether for publication, that you involve some sort of caveat to say, this is the main story, but yet give them places to go that might have. I mean, you don't have to create the 200,000 page 200,000 word tome that holds open a door, but at the same time give enough room to play to where if somebody needs to go and do something else, they can. Alice is about to wiggle out of her ponytails.
Alice, what's up?
I was just going to respond to Walt. What Walt's saying actually makes me laugh a lot because going back 20 some odd years, I'm not going to go into 20 plus years ago, when I first GM'd my first game, I had everything I wanted to, everything I envisioned in my head in this stone cold, stone written thing where every second was kind of planned out, not understanding what was going to happen with my players, even though I'd played a bit. And so I went in, and in under 3 minutes, one of my players absolutely destroyed my entire campaign because the campaign buy-in was this woman comes out and she needs your help. And there's it was a Rokugan thing. And there was this fire that rises around her. And I don't remember how it just got derailed, but basically at that moment, I learned I can't write everything out. So for years and years and years, I wrote very little out. In fact, when I'm writing if I'm GMing for my own home game, you will rarely find me having written more than 2 sentences before I GM. Rarely. For that session, I will know what I want to run as a whole, but for that session, I play off my players a lot, and I have 3 or 4 bullet points, and then I just let it go, because if I don't, things will just go crazy. When I write, though, I have to try and pretend each of my players is in my game, trying to screw me up.
And I think the greatest example of this that we've seen in media in the last few years, which really sums it up just perfectly, is in Game of Thrones. You got all these political machinations. You got all of this tension, political tension. Things are at a tipping point because things aren't as great as they could be with this one guy on the throne. And then as everything is going on, and this young boy is being sent off to the wall because he's a bastard and can't inherit and whatever. He turns to Tyrion Lannister and says, "So what do you have in all this? What is your purpose in all this?" He's like, "None. I just want to go on top of the wall and piss off it. I just want to piss off the top of the wall." And you're gonna encounter those players. So, do you have that social contract before everybody sits down and says, "Look, this game is about Bourne, Bauer, and Bond. We're gonna try and keep comedy out of it," or do you leave room for that comedy so that when that one player who wants to show everybody how witty they are, wants to piss off the top of the wall, is there room for that? So it's kind of a fine line, but to leave a little bit of room can never hurt.
That's fair enough. Wanted to show off. Well, before I get self-indulgent, there's a guy's been waiting with a question in the comments for a long time. And actually, we had a bunch of people show up. Welcome to everyone who's come out. Just want to mention, we have these beautiful dice that we're giving away. And if you send an email to mikelaugh@gmail.com with the word dice in the subject line, I'm going to pick somebody out of that list, and you'll get those root beer themed dice. So that's my commercial. Anyway, Bob, sorry, that's your unfortunate handle. I don't know how you got it either. Over in Facebook, is asking if we have any tips specifically for running rules light games like lasers and feelings, coming up with situations for that. Now, lasers and feelings, if you're not familiar, you've got just 2 stats. And usually things are pretty simple. I got to admit, most of the games I run tend to be light, but not quite that light. So I'm not sure I'm prepared. I'm the right guy to answer that question. Anybody else in the panel?
Lasers and feelings. Isn't that the one where one of the stats is pizza? I'm kidding. It's just.
Oh, when I saw you raising your hand, were you pointing to somebody?
Both, but let's have her go.
All right, Alice, please continue.
I definitely prefer to GM systems with a little bit of teeth to them. But as of the past few years, I've GM more and more light systems. How I go about it is what a lot of light systems do recommend. Grab your players and get them to input. So if you go to Babies with Knives, you'll find that I have GM stuff that's fairly light, like Powered by the Apocalypse or Scum and Villainy and such things like that. And what it is, well, I give them questions. I go, well, you guys are going to go storm a base. What does the space look like to your character's minds? And then I take that and part of it is going to be what they gave me of what that base looks like. Then I start inputting little things, twist to it so that they don't expect what's coming. And all of a sudden, the bad guys come and it's not quite the way that they expected, but there's some similarities. So use your players because they will have ideas for you. So you come in with a no prep game, rules light, and this is supposed to be off the cuff. Use your players.
For me, when you're going rules light, you need to find something that serves as a hook and an anchor for the players and the GM. If you are playing a very detailed, crunchy game like Pathfinder, there's a lot of setting built into just the rules of Pathfinder, right? The very fact that, hey, I've got an ancestry and I can be a dwarf or a goblin. Well, that tells me a lot about the world. The abilities and powers that those ancestries get tells you a lot about the culture of those groups. I can be an alchemist, I can be a wizard. Just looking at that, you immediately have a certain amount of connection to that. If I am playing Best Last Hope, which is a fairly rules-like game that I love, you create, as a group, you're like, okay, all of humanity is going to be destroyed from some threat. What's the threat? And you build that together. The other route you can go with that is you can have a strong elevator pitch. And by elevator pitch, I mean, if you ended up in the elevator with Jeremy Crawford, and he turned to you and he said, hey, Wizards of the Coast is thinking of starting a new role-playing game. What would you want us to pay you to make? And that's the pitch you've got between the first and fifth floor, your elevator pitch. So if you can tell people, hey, this is a superhero game, a lot like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, plus the CW DC television shows. That gives people a feel for what the power level is, what the attitudes are going to be like. The fact that you've added the CW stuff in there means that you're going to be talking about some drama. And you will probably, if you've got the stat feelings, you'll probably always get away with saying, well, I'm going to make a feelings check, and if I fail, I don't tell this person about something important for their own sake. And all of the plot drama comes from that. If you want to do something weirder, you have to have more touchstones, touch points for people to be able to understand. If I'm saying, hey, this game is Mask, Mobile Armor Strike Command, but our theme is Romeo and Juliet, but the lovers are Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Christine from the Stephen King novel, right? That gives people an anchor to what this game... It's a weird anchor, but that's an anchor to what this game will be like so that they can then build off that.
I would so play that game.
I would too. Well, hey, we just have a very special entrance by Mr. Lewis Porter Jr., who was a little bit late. Very glad you can make it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for being late. Of course, real life always affects you when you least expect it, of course. So.
And no worries. We got about 15 minutes left in the panel. If you want to give a brief introduction and kind of launch into your approach to adventure design, that would be awesome.
Oh, this should be very easy. Hello, my name is Lewis Porter Jr. I'm a game publisher for nearly 20 years. I've done a lot of products. Yeah, when last checked, today, 800 products of all different genres and specific types. And if you're ever curious, I like superhero stuff more than anything because within my reach is always a comic book. So that's just a weird thing that happens. So my process to write adventures is usually I'll take a really weird idea and then to say, I wonder what would happen if we did the opposite of that. So if you take like something simple and easy, like let's go with G.I. Joe, the first G.I. Joe cartoon. But you're playing typically you'd be playing the Joes, and they've got the equipment, and you get to go get the equipment to stop this guy from transporting bases and stuff like that. I'm like, well, what if you played Cobra, and you see G.I. Joe's got this new machine, but you got to steal it, and you play that all out because most people don't play the villain. You always play the hero. The hero's got the easy job. The hero's got everything. Got the cool looks. It usually has the attractive partner, and it's got everything. The villains get like the bad scarred issues, and the face is all messed up. So. That's the best way. Or you take stories that would be really normal and you twist them in ways you wouldn't suspect. Like my personal favorite one would be, what if you combined The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland? And I keep saying I'm going to make that one day. I don't know why. I think there's something there. I think there's something crazy there that could be awesome. Oh, I think so much awesomeness. So, it's just you find things that you would not put together and you put them together and make it look cool. At least that's what I've done. I mean, I usually that's what I will tell like Owen to do. I'm like, hey, Owen, I got this great idea. What do you think? And then he usually goes, you are insane. And I'm like, then I know it's good. That's when I know it's quality. That's high level. And that's about it.
The flip side of Lewis's and mine conversation sometimes is when Lewis says, I can't get anything to sell because there aren't elves in it and I hate elves. And I'm like, well, okay, Lewis, if the only thing that you can sell are elves, what you need to do is say, what can I do with elves that I will like, that you, Lewis, will like, so that you can sell it both to people who just want elves and to people who hate elves but will like the thing you do with elves. And that's another case of putting a spin on things. Putting a spin and putting a twist on an existing idea. I mean, we were talking earlier about mixing two storylines or two plot lines or two ideas. That can be a great way to create a interesting adventure hook.
Pride and Prejudice with zombies.
I actually recently did, well, it's not so recent. It's a project from 2004 that I'm actually revitalizing. But I have a similar problem with elves. And my big problem with them has been that people tend to play humans with ears that, pointy ears that live a lot longer. And theoretically, they're supposed to have a different perspective. And so what I did was, in my setting, I said elves aren't allowed. And then I wrote a race that is very similar to elves, but with a spin that I can buy into. And it's completely named differently, so therefore people can't just come in with that elven perspective. But there are influences from elves that I do like, parts of it. And I just bit-pieced, like you guys said, switched around.
And you can also use this for adventure-related things. I did a long-running second edition campaign where famously beholders I ran using a randomized chart because as aberrations, their minds were so alien that even I, as the GM, could not predict what made sense to them. So I had a chart that determined this is the target, the first closest, second, third, fourth. This is the eye ray they will use. And it does not matter if that makes any sense to me. It makes sense to the alien mind of the beholder. And as a result, my players became terrified of beholders because there was no predicting what they would do.
Don't be afraid. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, hey, we have a question from one of our audience again, because we're, hey, that was my response to John. I just put up on screen.
Yeah, John's good. John's good people.
John is good people. I'm a professional, folks. I'll try this at home. John McLaughlin, great guy. You probably know him. Thanks for making sure things are player focused. I have a tendency to make stuff hinge on things the players can never find out. What does the panel think about that?
It's very easy to have the thing that the villain is hidden, and the players can never find out. For one example, there was this time where a friend of mine was running an adventure, and he had decided that the clue that the PCs needed to find was in the freezer behind a block of ice that you had to chip out to find, and the players were, and the GM's like, so you're searching the house, where do you search? The PC's like, we search everywhere. But unless he said, okay, you're searching behind the freezer and we want to ship out the ice, unless you say that exact thing, the GM wouldn't allow you to find it. And that is the wrong way to do it. Always have a means for your players to find what you're looking for. Otherwise, the adventure is over. The clues should be hard to find, but not impossible.
I would suggest mysteries might be the hardest adventure to pull off in a satisfying way. And I just want to note, we just lost Owen. Wait, is he coming back? He's coming back. Owen, how you doing?
I think if you want to do something novel for adventures, or even, I guess it works on anything, is do what J. Michael Straczynski did in most of his stuff he does for his early sci-fi. He tells you everything that's going on in the first episode, but it doesn't make sense because you don't have perspective on it. So give them everything they need, but it doesn't make sense. And then later on, you reveal it slowly over time. And then it's like, oh, I should have known what that was. I mean, Jeremiah was one that did that. The entire first episode says everything you need to know for the first season, but you don't realize it till the last episode of the first season. And I was like, oh, and it sounds like it's brilliant, but it's like, that's how you cheated, They don't know what all this stuff means. You got all this stuff. You don't know what it means. Is it important? Maybe. I don't know. And then later on, you surprise them. It's important. Aren't you surprised? They're like,
I told you.
Yeah.
I do that a lot. I try and drop basically, I drop the same hint in different ways, in like a bunch of different ways. So like in one of my upcoming modules, there's from the very beginning, they start seeing coal dust and they start seeing coal on this or that. And there's little things that keep leading them in the same direction. And so they have the information they need. But in regards to what Jacob was saying, and having GM for John McMullen, there we go. See, I still mess up your name. I'm sorry, John. Having GM for him, and I adore him, and keeping
You
his
just
table
renamed
on
him
track.
after the character of Destro in G.I. Joe, but we won't judge.
What I would say is going with what Jacob said. You have an idea of what they need to find. Reward the players if they come up with something similar or they come up with something inventive. Just move it. They don't know that you moved it. Move the freaking ice block to their face because they came up with something really cool. I have a story that isn't my GMing, but Brandon from many, many years ago, he GM'd for a World of Darkness game. This was not a game I attended, but he gave the players a clue called A Maple in June. In his mind, all they needed to do was open a telephone book and go to A Maple, find June, and it was like A Maple Street or something like that. And the players ended up discussing what A Maple in June meant for like 7 hours and came up with some really inventive things. And Brandon's thing was, if they had just chosen one of those 2 billion intelligent things, I would have given it to them because, just move it. That's something then you don't have to worry about, will they ever find this? Because they will.
You
what's
can
my-
also
oh.
set up adventures. Sorry. You can also
Can
set
we,
up
pass-
adventures with no mysteries and nothing for people to discover. In Lord of the Rings, there's no mystery except for the very beginning. Once Gandalf says, "This is the ring," Sauron's coming for it, the ring wraiths are coming for it, here's the history of them, the only way we can get rid of it is to go talk to the elves, and they determine you have to throw it in Mount Doom. At no point do our protagonists have to discover anything. It's all handed to them. What's handed to them is, there's only one way to get rid of this. You have to sneak through a swamp full of dead people, get past a spider, go with... Even getting to Mount Doom isn't a thing they figure out, right? Gollum tells them, oh, you can go this way. It's just that every time they are told this is what you have to do, what it is an incredibly difficult thing. So you can set up an adventure, hey look, it's a murder mystery. Well, it's not a murder mystery. Here's the footage. This guy killed this person. Here's his note explaining why, and now he's on the run with $1 million, and he's on this train. Go stop him. And your characters can just go to the train and grab him. You can have all the trappings of the murder mystery or the modern search without any searching. This is what's happening. Stop it.
Fair enough. Mr. Mylar, were you trying to speak up there?
I was. First, I was going to shamelessly promote this adventure that I wrote a long time ago that has always been reviewed well by both like playtesters and other people. So it's called Fangs of Revenge, and it's this mystery. It's all around this like one girl who's the last in her bloodline, and these Hengi Yokai want her. And so there's a bunch of Hengi Yokai running around. There's like a labor strike going on in the town, and then also duplicity. But the main point is that there's like one essential clue, but it's broken up into 3 different clues. And again, I agree with these people, like if they say if the party goes left and you need them to go right to go to the dungeon, just flip the dungeon, make the dungeon on the left. But having multiple different clues that go to the same source is another great way to do it. Like you just give them enough opportunities to find the thing. And then if there's more than one thing, then, you multiply their opportunities for continuing the narrative in the direction you want it to go. Because mysteries are really hard to pull off well. So, like, give yourself lots of resources to do it.
The module that is coming out with that I have coming out with Frog God later this year, should be hitting into Go into Necromancer Games imprint. It is a mystery, actually, for a lot of it. The Act 1 is you exploring and investigating one location. And so throughout it, I have in different rooms the same clue given in different ways. So there's the clue given in a person's journal. There's a clue in the fact that there's coal dust. There's a clue in the fact that there's a scabbard covered in coal or this and that. And then there are these markings that you will make a knowledge check and you will know that it links to this. So I have 8 different clues linking to the same exact guy. So if you get 2 or 3 of them, that's enough.
Oh, that's cool stuff. Just wanted to mention one element from comic books, and They kind of didn't stick the dismount on this one, but back in the ancient days during the 52 event on DC, they had this weird ass chalkboard in Time Traveler Rip Hunter's bunker, and everything on there made you wonder what the hell's going on there, because it tied into something that you knew about as a reader, and they only ever really followed up on a few of them. It was really frustrating, but I always thought that would be a great way to start an adventure or maybe a campaign, just kind of planting the plot seeds and waving some wood flat rags at your players, saying, "Hey, look at this thing." So, just a thought. So we are down to the last 5 minutes. Anybody have any closing thoughts? Last minute things they didn't get a chance to say earlier?
I just want to know that since I've been following Lewis's stuff for like the last 12 years, I just need to know his secret for not aging.
Well, it's really, anything I do stuff I want to do. I don't try to do anything I don't want to do. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. It's not going to excite me. Just only do things to excite you. I mean, that's it. Excite you. If it doesn't go, ooh, we can do that, then don't even waste your time. I mean, that's why I'm doing M&M now. Oh, superheroes? Love superheroes. Let's do some cool superhero stuff. So yeah, and if you're not excited, and if you're really not like, it's different. I do this for enjoyment. I have a young son. He drives me crazy. That's my job. It's supposed to be my enjoyment. I go and make fun stuff, and it's but I don't want anyone, to be like, oh, if it hurts you to do it, don't do that. Don't do that.
I apologize in advance for the 70-pound running chainsaw that just moved through the room.
That's all right.
But yeah, Neo Exodus forever.
Thank you. And before I forget, because I know I will, since we were all talking about great murder mysteries, just in case if you haven't seen it yet, Knives Out, I still think is the best mystery I've seen.
Oh, it's so good.
It is good.
That's how you do a mystery, and I'm jealous how great it is. So if you haven't seen it, check it out.
Mike, are you voguing? All right. Oh, hey, Craig reminded me because I'm a horrible person. I forgot. Let us share Craig's comments so we can get to it directly. Craig, please forgive me. Two worthy causes. If you have the means, go to nerdburgergames.com/nerdburger.com and please contribute if you can. Thanks to all our panelists. Really appreciate you guys coming out. Last call for any closing thoughts.
Go
by Disaster Day.
Yeah, there you go. Go support these wonderful creators, please.
Agreed.
And don't be afraid to try and write or try and tell your own story. Worst case, you fall on your face, but then you just get back up. Don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, if you are unaware of it, the RPG Writer Workshop is great. I have a course there, but there's also a free one just on adventure writing. I think the next one is in November, but RPG Workshop, writerworkshop.com. Check it out.
I think both Wealth and I contributed scholarships to that last year. So if you get a chance, that's a good program. And here's nerdburger.com up in the share screen. So yeah, please check that out. Donate a couple worthy causes to contribute to. Thanks to all our panelists. Thanks to Craig Campbell. Big ups for Craig for organizing this, as we're all living through the latest COVID-19 apocalypse and we can't go anywhere. So thanks, Craig. That was awesome. Once again, it is mikelife@gmail.com if you want some of those yummy looking dice. And that's all I've got. Yes, Alice, go ahead.
I am going to be running one of Fainting Goat Games modules tomorrow for NERDBURGERCON. It is going to be Festival of Fear. So I think the table's already full, though. But yeah, I hope my players have fun, and we might record it. But I'm doing that for Banff. On behalf of Banff, I'll be GMing Festival of Fear. Super system, Walt. That's the system I chose. It's like I'm playing to the crowd here.
I heart you. You're amazing. Keep being amazing.
Thanks. You're amazing too.
I feel the love. It's warm. It's tingly. And I got to go. So thanks to everybody for coming out. Lewis, Mike, Owen, Jacob, Chris McLaughlin, Alice, Walt, everybody came out to listen to us. Appreciate it or watch us. And we'll get this.
Mike got my name right.
I got a note right here. It's in Sharpie on my hand.
I've known you for how many years?
Damn it, Felicia.
Like 18 months, I think. So
no longer now.
I used to drink very heavily. That's my excuse. All right. I will see all you guys later. Thanks again. And everybody have a good NERDBURGERCON. Go to the website, check out other panels. Lots of cool stuff going on. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.
Groovy.
Bye, folks.
Now,